or type of constants, actually type of constants. That's what actually general definition is. But TypeScript is JavaScript based. That's the reason. Same like array, it's not just only related type. So it's not just a related type. So you can simply say that it is a collection of constants. So because in some technologies, it is restricted to related type of constant, but here it is just collection of constants. It's just collection of constants. Enum is a collection of constants. And how these constants will work. So how the constants will work. So we will see, means how to configure them, how to work with them. Few examples we have to know. It's a collection of constants. So generally, what is the advantage of that is it allocates, generally it is used for initializing of values. Initialization of values. When an application requires some values at the time of startup, and it need to use the values across the requests, then a set of values can be initialized by using this enum. So technically, so how we configure the enums, what are the various points about enums, we will see. Generally, some regular points about enums, just what people know is, means due to some websites, references and all, sometimes we have wrong idea about enums. We need to know clearly about them, because many times people who discuss about enums, who talk about enums, so they usually talk about same type of constants and some other points. So here we have to know more than that actually. Generally, many people know that enum is a constant of numeric constants. They give the definition like it's a collection of numeric constants. But it's not like that. So enum has so many other options. Let's see. Generally, enums are configured with the help of enum. And you can give any name for the enum, like status code, status codes. That is the enum name. And it is a collection of constants. Constant name and its value. For example, I said not found. That is the constant and its value. The value. We can configure the enum, so not modified, modified, and some value. So we have collection of constants configuring, defining, and so technically having this, right? So that is collection of constants. All right. Now we have not modified. So we have OK. So that is 200. Some no content. So that is some 204, something like this. These are all the collection of constants. We have set of collection of related type of constants, related type of constants here. And if I want to access these constants and use the constants, so just I need to configure console.log. And you can access this constant with the reference of constant name. That means suppose I want to access the value not found. I want to access the value not found. So then it access by using the reference. That means the reference is status codes dot not found, not found. So we can store some constant values and we can just access those values with the reference of that enum. So that is basically how the constants are configured. Now, when you try to access this, you can see. So when I try to access that here, and yeah, tsc index.ts node index.js, and it is going to access these details and display. That is the enum. And generally, enum have one more mechanism. Actually, enum have auto incrementation. I will show you all the variations. Here, enum is having a collection of numeric values. Collection of numeric values. It can have other type also. I will show you. So when enum is configuring numeric values, one of the advantages of the enum is it have the auto incrementation for numeric values. Auto incrementation of numeric values based on the previous value. Based on the previous value. So it have auto incrementations. For example, suppose I am not configuring a value for no content. I am not defining a value for no content. So in that case, so the next value of this OK will be applied to this no content. That means automatically it can configure and define the value for that. That means actually now no content, if I try to access that no content here, so status codes dot no content, we haven't initialized any value. So based on its previous value, it will initialize the value. That means the next value of the previous value will be applied to this. That means now here the value for no content will be, the value of no content will be 201. The next value will be configured. So enums have the ability of auto incrementation. Remember, that depends on previous value. Suppose I have defined not found without a value and there is no previous value, then obviously it will start with zero. That means if I define not found here, status codes not found, and there is no previous value. If there is no previous value, automatically it will start with not found. That means here we are compiling that, and not found, you will see it will start with 0. The not found value is 0 here. So it depends on how you configure, and the numbers have auto incrementation. Remember, so when you are defining the values you configured, auto initialization of values will happen based on previous value. And if there is no previous value, the start value is always 0. It is always 0. So remember, this depends on only the previous. For example, suppose here the value is 404. Not found is 404. And modified is not defined. Modified is not defined. And it depends on the previous value. So that means it will be 405. That's how it is going to manage the values and configure the values. That is generally how enum automatically implements the value based on the previous values. So it is going to configure. For example, if not modified is given as 0, and not found is not defined with any value, it is not defined with any value, then so it will not be like -1. Usually what happens is, if not modified is 0, that means it is initialized with a specific value, and not found is not initialized with any specific value, then obviously it will also start with 0 only. You can see the status code not modified is set to 0. That means it will not take the value of the next value. It will not consider this next value. Based on next value, it will not apply anything. it will apply everything based on the previous value. So if there is no previous value, then it will set to 0. So this will not be affected. If any value is there, that value will continue. If there is no previous value, then it will configure and define in this way. So that is a collection of constants. And remember, generally when people say that enum is a collection of numeric constants, it's not like that. Enum can have collection of string constants also. So it can have a collection of string constants. That means you can define a string constant also. For example, suppose I configured status text, and here I am writing, so not found, and it can have a string not found. But what is the rule of the string constants in an enum? The string constants in an enum, so generally they cannot have auto implementation. They cannot have auto implementation of values. For example, I defined some OK. After not found, I defined OK. And you see, I cannot leave it empty. Because if enum contains string constants, it's mandatory. It's mandatory that you have to initialize the value for the next. It's mandatory. So string constants cannot be left empty without any value. They don't have auto implementation. So, and constant must be initialized with a value. You know that. So that means it must be initialized with value. It must be configured with the value. That means you have to define so with some value. For only numeric constants, auto implementation will happen. But for string constants, it's mandatory that every constant must be initialized. Every constant must be configured. So enum can have a collection of string constants. Enum can have a collection of, it can have a heterogeneous collection. That means various types of constants also. But remember, various types of constants means generally enum can have only string, number, and expression only. You cannot have Boolean type directly. You cannot have Boolean type. So if anyone asks question like, so what kind of constants we can have in an enum? A numeric constants, number, string constants, or an expression. You cannot have other type of constants. It can have various types, but among these three, it can be a string or a number or an expression. These are the various types of constants. So that means, for example, if I am defining here, so enum, I given as decision, and here we are configuring some values, and here I said some cancel. So it is not initialized with the value, then you know automatically it will be 0. I said yes, and I defined with a string, and I said no, and I am defining as false, so it's not possible. So you defined as 0, that's okay. So you have like unknown, so then it will be the continuous of the previous number. But remember, after the string, there cannot be a constant without initializing. After the string, there must be some constant initialized. After number, you can leave any constant without initializing. So you see, cancel will be 0. It is having the value 0. Yes is configured with yes, and no is configured with 0, and unknown will be configured with 1. So it can have different types of collection of values. So actually, so you cannot have Boolean type. So enum can have a collection of various types of values, but they must be among number, string, and expression. So you can have a number or a string or an expression. You have to configure by using that. That is technically how the enums are configured and how the enums are used to handle the collection of constants. And enum can have an expression as an initializer. Enum can have an expression as an initializer. And remember, enum expression is not supported with all type of operators. That means enum can have an expression. For example, suppose, so we have x is equal to 10 and y is equal to 20 and z is equal to x plus y. You can have this in an enum. So enum can have an expression. It can have an operation. So that means enum expression can be configured. So, but remember, enum expression is not supported with all type of operations. So enum expression of enum can contain only literals. And the literals that are supported for enum, that means in an enum to build expression, you cannot use all types of operators. Only because, remember, the return value of any constant in enum must be a number or a string. You know that because enum can have number or string. Enum cannot have any another. So number or string. In that case, if you write an expression, that expression should be in such a way that it can return only number or string. Expression returns only either number or string So enum can have only these operators like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus. So enum can have another option like uh, binary operations. So binary, so you can have binary. And these are all binary. You have exponent, tilde. These operators only supported because these will return a number or a string. In that case, it is allowed to handle these operations. But enum cannot have operations like greater than or equal, less than or equal, not equal, because they return a Boolean value. So enum can be configured with an expression, and the expression for enum can be so using only these type of operators, not others. So you can configure the enum, so collection of constants, and define them with this kind of operations. Generally, when you are dealing with enums, so these are the basic things. So first important point, so make sure that so you are using enums only for collection of constants, and set of constants are kept. It can be number constants, it can be string constants, or it can be expression. It can have a combination of all the three. So based on this, some important questions are asked. So like technically, some questions are asked like, so can we declare enum constant? So one regular question is, can we declare enum with the const as access specifier, specifier. So this is a regular question. That means already enum is a collection of constants. But in experience level, in some interviews, they ask this question: can we declare enum as a constant with a const access specifier? That means they are saying that suppose you have this enum. Suppose we have enum. So enum, suppose we have HTTP verbs, that is the enum. We have like get, we have post, we have like put, like this. Now the question asked is, can we have enum defined with a const? So enum is already a collection of constants. And so the question is, can we have const as an enum? So that is, yes, it is possible. That means it is used. Actually, enum itself is a collection of constants, but when declaring enum, a const, so access const reference is used for enums, because generally when you define expressions in an enum, why to define constant enum? So that is another question. That means, can we declare enum as constant? Yes. So why we need that? So why we need constant enum? Constant enum. Generally, where the developers use constant enums, the main purpose of using constant enum is very simple. Actually, developer use these constant enums while defining expressions, because usually expressions can change dynamically. Expressions can change dynamically. So the definition can change, but the return value should not change. It should be either number or string only. That means expressions usually can change their values. Expression have the ability to change the values. Due to that, when you build an expression, suppose a equal to 10, so b equal to 20, and c is equal to a greater than b, it is not supported. A plus b, it is supported. It is supported. Due to any technical reasons, if an so expression is configured, and expression can change the return value based on the what values you defined here. Sometimes this expression can change the return value. So we don't want expression to change the return value. What the value, what the expression is configured to return, it should always return the same. That means initially it is defined to return a number, then it should always return a number. It should not change it. In that case, we have to define as a constant enum so that expression cannot change its return value. That is a general habit of configuring constant enums, constant enums. This is a tricky question asked in regular interviews for experienced people, because enum itself is a constant. But in real world development process, developer have an habit of giving a enum as constant. So then very much confusion. Why? Because why you are giving enum as a constant? Because we don't want it to be reinitialized, changed. The expressions can be changed and we don't want to change for that reason. And that is another question. And another question is, so what are all the expressions? That means, what are the literals? So what are the literals supported for expression? So I given a list. So expression related, all literals supported. That means addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all these are the operators supported. And another question is, what is so heterogeneous enum? Heterogeneous enum. Heterogeneous enum is nothing but it is a combination of, so it is a combination of string and number. String and number type of enums are considered as heterogeneous enums. In many interviews, one more question is asked is, what is ambient enum? Ambient enum. So these questions are for experienced people. So different tricky options are asked here. But actually we know all these points. Heterogeneous enum is collection of different types of constants. And ambient enum is nothing but all enums are by default non-ambient. That means all are constants and have initializer. If ambient enum refers to non-constant values in collection. They don't have an initializer. Already we know that. That means, for example, if I don't define or initialize a value for any particular reference in the enum, we are not defining any reference, no initialization of value for this p, then this is considered as ambient. Ambient means, so there is no initializer. If there is no initializer, then we call it as an ambient. So that means, what is an ambient enum? So ambient enum is an enum, so that doesn't have any initializer. So if it is not having any initializer, the initialization of values will happen based on the previous value. So this value will be changing according to the previous value. So it will not have a constant value, because generally we said that enums are constants, but ambient enums will change their values according to the previous value. If the previous value change it to 11, then automatically B will be 12 now. So this is ambient mechanism. It's an ambient enum. So generally, what is an ambient enum? The ambient enums will not be initialized with a value. So they are not configured with a value, right? Another very important question in interviews here is, what is enum reverse mapping? Reverse mapping. These are very frequent questions for experienced people in interviews. So we have to be aware of this. So why we need constant enums, why we need heterogeneous enums, why we need ambient enums. So what is an ambient enum? What is reverse mapping? Actually, reverse mapping is nothing but it is a technique used to access the constant name using its value. So accessing constant name using value. Generally, we access the value using the constant name. That means we access the value using the constant name. Suppose we have, so get is equal to, suppose this is 0, and post is equal to some 2, and put is equal to some 4. Now here, generally when we access http verbs dot get, it will return 0, dot post it will return 2. That means we generally access the values. So but with the help of a value, we can able to access the constant name under which reference it is stored. We can access that constant name. This is called as reverse mapping. We call this mechanism as reverse mapping. So that means we can define the reverse mapping technique for that. Generally, reverse mapping is nothing but, so accessing, how it can be accessed. Let's see. Suppose I defined an enum and I given as status code. And in this enum, so I defined not found, which is 404. So not found. And let status code is equal to status code dot not found. Status code dot not found. So it will get its value. After getting the value, that means we are printing the value. So console.log, we are printing that status code. That means whatever the status code is there, we are printing that. So that means here I defined a code. So is equal to the status code. Status code. We are accessing the status code. Now I am configuring status text. So I am configuring status text. I am defining the status text. In this status text, what we are doing here is reverse mapping. Reverse mapping is nothing but we access the enum. Enum name is status code. Into that, we will pass the status code reference, which contains its value. That means this status code contains the value of not found. Value of not found is 404. So status code contains 404, and you are passing that 404 into this. That means the status code of value. This is actually value. That means, for example, here I am just for your reducing the confusion sake, I say code, and I am accessing that code here. I am accessing the code and displaying, and I will pass that code into this now. I will pass that code into this. Enum reference, we can access the constant name. So I will print that here. So console.log, I will put text is equal to the status text. We are accessing this. This is called reverse mapping of enum. So when I compile and run this, so you can see when I compile and run this. So this is the reverse mapping of enum. That means in one technique, you can access its value. In another technique, you can access its constant name. So under which reference the value is stored, you can access and you can use it. That is what generally the reference, how you configure and define them. So technically that is called as reverse mapping. So while working with enums, so these are all the basic questions that come. So we have to know all these techniques, how they are configured, how they are verified and defined. So I hope everyone is clear with this, understood all these points. Is it clear? So I hope everyone is clear with this constant, right? Yeah, good. That is how we have to understand about the constants. Yes. So that is enums. So all the points. That means what is an ambient enum? Tell me what is an ambient enum. What is an ambient enum? Ambient enum means ambient enum will not have an initializer. Is not initialized. Yeah. Without initialization, ambient enum, right? So heterogeneous is a combination. That means what are the what are the type of values supported in enum? Type of values supported in enum, three types. What are those? Number, string, and expression. Good, right? Yeah, that is how we need to understand about the enum, right? So that's the key point. And reverse mapping is the technique of accessing the value constant name based on its value. That is reverse mapping technique. And auto incrementation of enums cannot happen for strings and expressions. It can happen only for numeric type. So that is basically the options, right? This is generally working with enums, dealing with the enums. Next, one more concept we need to understand here is modules. One more important options we need is about the modules, right? So how we configure and define the modules. So what is the modules and how do we configure the modules, right? So technically, the module system is very important to understand because this is what we are going to use in our application. So actually module system is used for building a library for your application. So it is used to build library for your application. So it improves reusability. It improves maintainability. It improves testability. So it makes the application loosely coupled modules. So your web applications and all these type of applications are built with different types of module systems. Actually, all the libraries that are built, JavaScript based libraries are built with different types of module systems. So module systems like we have AMD. So AMD is asynchronous module distribution. AMD. We have like common JS. We have like UMD, universal module distribution. These are all different types of module systems actually. AMD, CommonJS, UMD. That means the library is built with these type of module systems. Generally, as a developer, so while working with JavaScript based environments, you have to be aware of these things. So majority, we need to be aware of these things, right? Require JS, so many. I just given only few, right? Require JS. These are all module systems. So there are so many module systems. I just given few. So what is the point is, for example, different JavaScript libraries are there. We have jQuery, we have React, we have Vue. So we have like Knockout. So so many. Now what happens is they need all Angular and all these. So these needs libraries. Already few are libraries by themselves. React is a library. jQuery is a library. Some more libraries need to be integrated. So then the libraries need to be integrated, imported, and used. Now, one of the main problem that we will face actually is, so the library may be built with a different module system. And in your project, you have a different module system. That means your project is using some UMD. And the library that you imported from other applications is some require, or it is some AMD. Then it is not compatible. These type of issues will regularly come when you are using. So we need one module system which can handle any of those. That means irrespective of any kind of module system built with, so we need to access them and use them. Typescript have that ability. Actually, your Angular have that ability. So in Angular, I will show you how it transforms that. So now the point is, we build the library by using a module system so that we can inject that into any application and use any application. Reusability concerns, maintainability concerns, testability concerns, so separation, loosely coupled, extensible, that will be more better in performance. So how we build the modules, how we configure the modules and use the modules, let's see. One simple point about that. So for that, I am creating here a separate folder. So let's create a separate folder here. So I will give a new folder, some project. So project is a new folder. In this project folder, I'm adding again subfolders. So one folder contains contracts. So here we maintain all our contracts. Another folder, so templates. Here we maintain all our templates. And in project, make sure that you are adding in the project folder only. So in the project folder, select and create another folder, that is templates. And in project, another folder, components. Okay, in the project, another folder, that is app. These are all the folders we are having. Now in this here, first we know the order. We need to first build the contract. So let's go to the contract and add a new file. So I given this as iProduct.ts. This is a contract. We can have multiple contracts. We are configuring a contract. Now here we are declaring an interface as iProduct. and we are defining some rules for designing the product. So it will have like name, it is a string type. So we have like price, it is also it is a number type, and we have like some quantity, that is a number type. And we have total. Total is a method, so with a number return type, and print is a method with a void type. All these are the options defined in the contract. Now here, when you configured a contract, in this contract, so it is in a separate file. So actually this contract that you return is in a module. Actually, this is entire file is considered as a module scope. So that means above this is entire module. Actually, it is module. In a module, you can have contracts, you can have templates, you can have classes. So this file is considered as a module. That means you have a contract. So anything you defined in a module is accessible only inside this module, not outside the module. If we want to use outside the module, then we have to mark it as export. We have to mark it as export. It's mandatory. If it is not marked as export, then generally it is not accessible. So outside, we cannot access outside. Inside this module, you can access. So you cannot access this outside. So I created a contract and defined with export. Here, two more options are there. Usually, there can be another contract in the same location. So export. So interface. So I category. There may be another contract in the same module. If there are two contracts in the same module and both need to be exported, then that's okay. You can just give this export and you can import these two in any location and use them. How to import, I will show you. But if there is only one configured, and this is the default, that means suppose you have this now. So that means you have these two contracts. So interface and this. If I want to import in any location, actually now I have to use import keyword. Import and from the module name. That means the file name. File name is actually iProduct dot ts. That is the file name actually. Just iProduct. That is the reference we give actually. Now from this, we have to import. And what contract to import from this location? The contract name. Now I defined the contract name as iProduct. This is not valid. That means this technique is not valid. So that means this technique is valid if this file contains only one contract, and it is the default one. If it is not only the one and it is not the default one, then you have to put a curly brace and you have to define all the interfaces or classes from that I category. Like this, we have to define. That means currently we configured both as just export. Then you have to define in this way. Suppose there is another technique here. That means here it is having category ID. So that is some number like this. Suppose we have to import this. So only one is there and it should be imported. Then generally we have an habit of configuring as default. When you configure as default, so in that case, this is the default import. So default export and default import. In that case, so for that iProduct, you should not use this curly brace to import. So iProduct, this is not valid now because it is default. You can simply access in this way. That means if it is not default, then you have to put in curly brace. It is mandatory. If it is default, then you can just give the name. Give the name. There can be one default and others. There can be one default and others are not default. You can write like this. Default, whichever configured as default, is not defined. So with the curly brace. Others can be configured like this. That means I category like this. So this is the method of importing and using. I will show you that importing. So there can be multiple. And if you are configuring, then you can keep it as default. I will show you that. Initially, this is one. So export default interface. So there is another technique of configuring that. If you don't define here in a module system, so just interface is defined. After configuring the interface, you can write here export default and iProduct. You can export like this. There is another technique. That means directly you can configure it in that line, or you can define like this. That is the general default. That means both are same. If you are not defining that, that means it cannot be accessed outside. So these two techniques are there. Anywhere you can configure. So you can directly write as export, or after writing you can export. You can configure that. So suppose initially I am writing export. Okay, interface. And here I am creating the contract. Contract is ready. Let's go to template. I will add a new file. So the product template .ts, product template.ts. Now in this product template, I have to implement this. Certain functionalities we need to implement, others later. So in that case, how you configure the template? Here first we have to import. So we are using here import. So import from, from the file, that means // and because come out of the current folder, we are in a separate folder called templates. Come out of that folder and go to contracts. In the contracts folder, so we have a file iProduct. So we have to configure that iProduct. And here, what to import from that location, we need to define that. So what to import from there? So I need to import iProduct from there. That's how we need to configure. And I'm not using this curly brace here. Now you see it shows an error. So the error is nothing but it says that it is declared. So it is configured. But in the module system, so you are using the parenthesis, that means curly braces for that. So that is not correct for this type of reference. So that means it says that you define this curly brace for that because it's not configured as default. Suppose if it is configured as default, then it will be fine, no problem. If it is not configured as default, so then it is mandatory that you have to put that in the curly brace and specify that. That's the basic thing you need to understand. And once it is imported, now here I am creating again a class. This is an abstract class because it's a template. So abstract class and say product template. This product template implements iProduct. It implements that iProduct. And as per the rules, it should implement everything. So that means we have public, so name. So it is a string type. We configured that. Another one is public price. It is a number type. We are configuring them. And so we defined quantity. That is also a number type. And we defined here public total. Total is a number type. So it should return this dot quantity into this dot price. And here we have a total. So that means public abstract. So here we are configuring abstract. and that is print. Print is an void type, so its functionality is not configured. Now you can see this product template is not accessible. It's not accessible. So we can write here export product template. So this is exporting the product template, and configuration of export product template. So we need to define, so how we need to export it. So because it's a template now, and the various techniques I told you, you can keep it default or just you write here export abstract class. We can configure anyway. Now the template is ready. So that is a product template, and we need to implement this and extend this in a component. That means we will go to the components here and add a new file. And in this file, so we are defining product component dot ts. That is the product component ts. In this product component ts, we are importing. So import. You can have multiple imports. You can import all of them in one file. There are multiple imports. So technically, we are defining import. So from which location dot slash. So from templates, we have to import the product template, and we need to get this. So the product template here. And we are creating a class. That means export class product component. And this product component extends the product template. And as per the rules here, we define some name. So name is configured as some Samsung TV. So some price is defined with some price, and quantity is defined as quantity. Then total is configured to return. So this dot quantity into price, this dot price. And here we are defining total. So print, so have to return the functionality. That means we need to configure. So here, so console.log. So it should print all details. So name is equal to this dot quantity. So we are configuring that, and total I specified here as total is equal to, so this dot total. That's the option here. That's ready. Now we need to import this product component in our application, and we have to use it. That means just what we have to do here is, so simply we have to go to the app. App is the folder. In the app, we are creating a new file. So my app.ts. Here I want to use that library. Actually, you can import all of them here, and you can write. That means you can import the from contracts. From contracts, you can import iProduct. So you can import from templates. You can import from templates. So you can import the product template and use it. You can configure them. That means product template. You can import and use it. So here you can import and configure it. iProduct. So you can configure it. But the point is, we don't need this, because so we need to handle only one. That means the main component. So that means we are importing the product component from the component's product component. And this product component class will provide all the details. Just we have to create a TV object is equal to new product component. It's the class. And through that TV, so we can access all the details. I am just accessing print. That's it. So that means now everything that you are using so is not present in this file. So that means the library that you are using for your application, it's so simple, just an object is configured here. This is imported from this particular class. And when you go to the definition of this class, that means right click and go to definition. When I right click and go to definition, it takes me to the component class. This component class is extending template, and right click on template and go to definition. So template contains these details. This template is again using these rules. So the rules go to definition, and these are the rules. This is finally we have. That means a hierarchy is maintained and everything is configured into one location. Now I need to compile and run this. I need to compile and run this. Remember, if the module system is not configured, then you cannot compile and run these separate files into one unit. If the module system is configured, Typescript already comes with a module system, and it can handle all module systems. Due to that, what happens is, so you can use any module system and work with them in this environment. Sometimes in projects, we have to additionally install different module systems like CommonJS, like Require.js. But this Visual Studio Code comes with by default universal. All the module systems are supported. That's the reason what you can do is simply now open the terminal. That means the app, you have to open this location. So I will open that app in the command prompt. And here I am executing. So tsc my app.ts. So when I execute this, observe carefully. So now it is compiling and processing this TS file. Not only compiling and processing this TS file, in the background, it uses a dependency injection mechanism. That dependency injection mechanism, it comprises of an injector and a provider. What provider will do is, provider provide the information about all dependencies, information about all the dependencies. All the dependencies means, what are the dependencies? Product component is a dependency. Product template is a dependency. And iProduct contract is a dependency. It will identify the dependencies required for this application. And it will provide to the injector. So injector is responsible for accessing those dependencies from the memory and compile them and process them. So this is by default using a dependency injection mechanism in the background, which is going to access your components that are dependent and inject them and compile and process them. Due to this, you can observe that automatically you compiled only my app.ts file, but all the dependencies are compiled. You can see in the folder, components JS file is generated. Contracts JS file is generated. Templates JS file is generated. That means it will identify all the dependencies. It will compile and process all the dependencies and return those dependencies. Now, once you run this, so that means once you run this, my app. So here node my app.js. When I run this, it is going to print the details and handle them. That means now your application is clean. So, but that application is built with a lot of libraries. It is a combination of collection of various libraries. We have contracts, we have templates, we have components, and we are injecting them into the application and we are building that. This is how actually your entire Angular application is built. That is the reason you have to know this mechanism, how the module system works. Actually, this is general JavaScript based module system only. So JavaScript uses this module system. So this same module system is now used here, and it is very important for us. So we need to know, so what is the module system, and we need to know how the module system is configured and defined. And we have to understand how the module systems are handled in our application. So generally we use this module system to build applications. So that means build applications. And the advantage of this module system is, so it enables reusability, maintainability, testability of your application. So that's how we can configure. Actually, different module systems will be there. I already told you, but this is the basic approach that we follow and we use regularly in our applications. So in our projects. So you have to know this approach. So there is different other module systems. So where we have other mechanisms, that means to import the library. So we use like require. In other module systems, we use like where. So the contract is equal to, by using require, we import that from that. That means require from which location, the module name, that means like I product. So that's how we import and use. But here, this is the basic approach, how we configure and use. And I already told you that what is the meaning of export. So what is the meaning of default? Because these are very commonly seen when you are defining and configuring, right? And remember, these are used for general functions and all, right? For example, suppose you are having a function, you are writing a function. A module can contain functions. So function, some function name and some functionality. Now, if I want to access this function outside this scope, then you have to export. So we need to export that function so that we can access the function and use the function in another location. So if it is not, it is locally available only for this location. So that is how we define. So that is generally. And what is the purpose of default, I told you. So that means if your class, your module contains multiple components and one is the default that has to be imported, then you can configure as default. And usually if it is default, you don't need to use the curly braces to import them. So if it is not default, it is mandatory that you have to use the curly brace to import and configure. This you should be very familiar, because this is what generally we use in our real world projects. So how we can work with these module systems in our Angular also, we follow the same approach. So once you are aware of this, now we are ready. We can start working and dealing with Angular. So now we can start working and dealing with Angular. So this all knowledge of TypeScript is enough to start working with Angular. So now from tomorrow onwards, we will start dealing with Angular. What is Angular? How do we set up environment for Angular? So how Angular works, and whatever the language you have learned, you have to use that in Angular now, right? That we will discuss in the next session. Tomorrow we will continue with this. Okay. So tomorrow we start with